This is your daily market recap from Monday, January 31, 2022. Let's go. This is Dan Max at EXP Realty, aka the trading agent, and this is my stock, Bitcoin, gold, and silver daily market recaps. Please subscribe if you like what you see. Thank you. This is Dan Max at EXP Realty, aka the trading agent, and this is your live trading alert for January 31st, 2022. I am currently on vacation, but will be recording this video because it is easy to see that the things that we've been talking about are coming to fruition. As we talked about, the market would be probably bottoming, rising into the first 3 days of the new month and also the previous 3 days of the last month. If you don't know what I'm talking about, check out the back to basic videos. We talk about this kind of stuff frequently. The first and last 3 days of the month have fund flows that typically are bullish. And if you're not familiar why, I don't want to get into it, but here's the video, check it out. And again, if you ever have any questions, please stop by the Discord room. Friends and family are always here chatting and bullshitting and talking about the market. So there's a lot to review today, and let's get into it. So where we always start, Bitcoin. Big cup and handle, we talk about it a billion times. It's just how big is the handle? Well, ultimately, I think we may have bottomed. We talked about that a lot, but the thing you need to watch for is the downtrend break. That's the key here. You break the downtrend, and I think you're going to get going much higher. You can see on the hourly, there's been a lot of volume down here at the lows, which I'm a big fan of because, again, if the market can shake out weak hands at the lows, the market makers can accumulate inventory to mark up later in prices. So simply, if you're not familiar with the volume at price rules, how the market works, again, there's a whole room here about volume at price. Please feel free to check it out, the books, some of the interesting information about it. But let's get into the rest of the market because that's where it's getting a little interesting. I apologize, I just logged into this computer. People who know me know I don't trade from this computer. This is just for filming. The TLT, we've talked about this a bazillion times. And if you zoom out, you can see very clearly. I thought this was going to be the range low in black, but it ultimately was this little blue box. That was the old support zone. I thought this level would hold, but look, it looks more like a bear trap as we've come down to the low end of the range, and now we've made a higher low. And again, I've just said watch the 20-day. I believe the market priced in two Fed rate hikes already. TLT went from 155 down to 140. If you look at the actual 10-year spread, 10-year yield, it went from like 1.35 up to 1.85. So again, two rate hikes priced into the bond market. If we get over the 20-day, do not be surprised if we go higher. I was, pointing some of the headlines out in the market as I was on my way home from the ski hill, and it was interesting that you can already see the news, the media trying to leak this headline that the jobs number could be bad for January. And if you look at some of the economic statistics, the market is softening pretty quickly. I mean, again, just talking of rate hikes has got people nervous. The dollar, calling this, we said, hey, we might retest the top of this resistance zone. Again, if you zoom out, this area isn't just some random drawn area. It's very support resistance. Oops, went too far in the Wayback Machine. You can see it here. With support here, with support here, with support here. When it broke, it failed. We'll notice what's happening now. We're hitting this resistance zone, and we hit the very top of range, and we talked about this in the weekend recap. Exhaustion gap, doji. This might be a novice gap, and a novice gap is usually where the retail jumps in at the highs or the lows right before the trend is about to flip the other direction. So for example, a novice gap at the high would be a gap up that ultimately resolves lower in time. So keep that in mind. It looks like it potentially could be. Let's get into the VIX. Hate to tell bears why I'm just continuously shorting the UVXY and they don't really listen, but when the VIX gets up into the crash underway zone, you got to be careful that ultimately the market can reverse the other direction in the near term. Now, how long does this last? I don't know, but again, if the motivating factors for lower prices in the markets were Ukraine and rate hikes, well, it's priced in. And let's be honest, the Ukraine stuff I don't think is going to matter. SPY, we've talked about this. Again, be looking for buy points. We talked about this blue zone. It held there multiple times, and look what happened. What did we say last week? Get over the 200-day, and this thing's got more room upside. But what happened today? we open low, and then we get over the 200-day, and it just pumps. And if you're not watching these videos, I don't know what to tell you, but if you've gotten this far, I always tell you, like, watch the whole freaking video. There's a lot of nuggets in here that can predicate and predict what's going to happen here. Same thing with the Qs, watching this level, old support zone. It held it. What do we talk about? Just needs to kind of clear this 350 area, and that close on Friday I thought was going to be bullish. And again, first of the month, last 3 days of the month are usually bullish. Now watch the 200-day, and again, keep in mind the Nasdaq has been the weaker of the two indexes compared to the SPY. It's definitely been weaker. I don't know how high it's going to go. I think money ultimately is rotating into commodities long term, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the Qs can't bounce. So just, you know, kind of keep a little bit eye on everything. Again, I just bring up the EXPI to tell people, like, if you're not looking at this for what it is, every time this thing pops, just short it. I mean, you just ultimately short it. It always goes lower. I mean, you can't zoom out far enough to see it. I mean, I know there's been big spikes before in the markets, but one of the things that people have to be aware of is that this thing is just, it's meant to be day traded. And when it spikes, it times out like an option in the sense that it decays. And so if you're holding the UVXY, you have to be right away, and it has to be traded. It's not meant to be something that's part of your portfolio held for the long run. GLD, put out an alert on this. Let's see, go to the Discord room again, because I want people to realize, like, the channel is facilitating a lot of things. If you go into the trading agent alerts, put out a gold alert this weekend, said watch the area. We talked about the sentiment being too bullish at the highs, and said this area filling this gap I thought would be a great buy zone. Today confirmed it. We gapped up and closed over the 100-day. I would watch that. If you get a retest back in 165, 160, sorry, 160, 166, 167, I would grow a big pair of, you know what, golden balls and buy a lot. Again, silver, no-brainer buy zone. We backed into it. Again, sentiment, when it hit the 200-day, we talked about this. Again, so if you're not watching these videos and you're missing this stuff, we talked about the 200-day being resistance previously, and it acted like resistance again. I thought we needed to hold this level. Once it got below it, with the sentiment being so bullish, you just knew you were going to wipe people out. And look what happened. You have indecision days, but gap downs. And what happens? You retest, and people go, oh, it's silver, it's the paper contract, SLV. Well, it's like, I don't give a shit, because I'm looking at silver ounce. If you look at the ounce price, it's whatever, $23, $22, 21, whatever that price range ends up being, equates to this blue zone. And this blue zone is support and resistance. And now that we're holding it as support, I think it's what you consider like a coiling spring before it's about to pop. So just keep that in mind. People get too bearish at the lows and they can't see the bigger picture. It's like, I want to buy down this no-brainer buy zone because it's always rewarded you. It's always popped. And notice this and keep this in mind. I'm going to shift this and see what happens. Interesting. Yeah, that might be the trend now. I mean, again, it might be one of those things where it's where you can't close below. And sometimes you have to take the wicks out, but it seems to be holding this area again. I mean, I've bought more of it. I thought it was just too much of a gift. And do they manipulate it back down? Time will tell. Time will tell. AL, talk about too high, too low, and this doji was very ominous. You don't, when you go from a low to a high and you end with a doji, always tell people, sorry, I zoomed out too far, be aware that it might be pop. I mean, you had it here, that doji at the low. I think, again, it's gone too far, too low, too fast. If you look at the monthly charts, you can see we're coming into this channel low, the 50 month. Could it go a little lower? I mean, ultimately anything is possible. I just wouldn't bet on it long term because, again, it's like horseshoes and hand grenades. You're just trying to be close to the bottom. That's what I tell people. I mean, have stops, but try to be close because picking the lows and the highs are always difficult. AG put out an alert about this. It said anywhere under 10 was an absolute gift. Looks like a broadening pattern with a lower low. I know people say, well, isn't that bearish? And it's like, well, you know, zoom out. Look at where you come from. I really think this 50 month is going to hold. We were at 24, almost 24, and you're back under 10. And the price of silver is not down commensurate to the stock. I mean, I know miners are leveraged versions of the metal in a sense, but it's not, it's been hit too hard. I don't think it makes sense ultimately, and you will see it pop. That's why it's time to buy down here. PAAS, There's another one making a lower low, but look at the volumes down. Like the volume is getting released finally. So maybe that's where the market makers is taking this action, is to release the bulls from their misery right before it's about to go higher. I always tell people, like, don't be surprised sometimes when markets go below ranges you think they are just before they pop. Let's keep that in mind. Let's get into layer X. Did an alert about this as well. It said watch the monthly, the 20-month here in red. Nice pop. Look at the action today. Now the volume is, I like this. This is way more than average. I mean, the average is somewhere in the like 8 to 10 million shares. What are we doing here? 25 to 34. Like that's I can get down with that. Keep in mind, straight line move gets bought at some point. Now obviously the next area is ultimately going to be this 22 range. What happens on the bounce? Do you fail and back up before you go higher? Only time will tell. VALE, interesting to see it down today in a market that was strong, but what have we said? Watch the 20-day. Since it got over it, it's acted as support. Here we go. If you see this thing down in the 15 range, don't be surprised, because look what it did. It went from 11 to 14, consolidated, and then you went from 1350 up to 16. I mean, do the math on these. These are 20% moves that are digesting it. And every time it pops 20%, it digests $1 or $2. That's fine. That's a normal bull market, because again, you have to think about the dynamics of how things get shaken and things continue to rise higher before they go higher. I mean, the market maker has to like shake people out before they can go higher. We've talked about this long term. We've got a ton of upside here. So let's get into tech, because ultimately tech was one that I thought short term was oversold. But look at the bear. So speaking of traps, like we talked about the 200-day need to hold. Well, look what happens. You have this big down day, exhaustion. Then you have this green day where you make a lower low and you close back inside the candle. Now, sometimes you consider, it looks like what consider an outside reversal day. You see it here where you make a low, higher high and then fail. You made a higher high and then fail. Made a higher high and fail. Lower low and fail up. Now, again, I think short term, there's probably 20. I mean, we talked about this in previous videos. I liked it, and again, was ultimately wrong about the particular location at bottom. But still, my premise was that ultimately there was going to be a 25, 30 point pop. And if you do the math here, 100 up to 125, I mean, I think that's very reasonable here, considering how far and how fast it's dropped. Apple, I've been very positive on this stock, not because ultimately I think it's the best stock in the world, but I just think I did an alert on this. So watch the 100-day. Look what happened 4 days there, and I've continued to predict on the monthly that I think we're going to get this upside. We're going to get somewhere in the 190s to 200 range. Did Apple save the market last week with its big beat? Now, again, it's hard to tell, but this action, think about it. If you come off the lows with volume like we are, it should pump back up. And the first resistance obviously is going to be the old resistance where everyone's trapped who bought up near the highs. I mean, 182, again, if you bought it on the 100-day at 157 and it gets back up to the 180s, 30-point moves are a great swing move, especially in a week or two. And if you do the math, it's 20%. Again, make 20%. I know people want to make bigger percentages swinging, like trading options, but man, you can make it in stocks and it's way safer. Your stops aren't as, you can lose 1 or 2% versus 10, 15, 20, maybe 30% on the spread in options. I just love to remind people that, because they always over leveraged options. Roblox, here's another one. We thought we bought them a little earlier, but look what it did. That doji on Friday, where we're literally below the IPO price. Now you gap up. Is this a professional gap to start the up move? Could be. Keep in mind where this thing came from, 140 down to 55. That's why I was thinking it might bottom here and or might bottom here, but ultimately it went lower. But the mindset was, hey, like this thing is way oversold. It's due to bounce. And look what it did. It's definitely bouncing. So let's get into some of these other names. Let's do MicroStrategy. This one's been really frustrating in the sense that like Bitcoin looks like it's bottom, but this thing just kind of held the lows, and like you're starting to see some volume down here at the lows. I think it might be due to pop. If Bitcoin pops again, I think this thing has hundreds of points. So that's where it's so hard for people to buy this and have a stop and try to minimize a loss. Because imagine you have bought this thing 3 times and you lost 50 points on it. This thing can make that 50 points back and 5 times that. But if your stops aren't tight and you're down, and you just bought it at the 600 range, then you're trying to get back to even. It's a totally different trade. Hence why stops matter or discipline matters. RIVN, We figured this was due to bounce. It's just, man, this thing's been acting like complete shit. You know, it hit the 1.5 fib extension down and it bounced. Not surprised. Tesla, this is another one I put on the radar. I said, watch the 200-day. Watch, and look what's happened. We held it with that hammer, boom. Watch the downtrend now. If you get down below, if you break the downtrend with volume, could it get back up to the 1200 range? Anything is possible. Let's get into PENN. Getting over the 20 days, the key for this thing, and it's right at it. Just watch it. It's right at it. UTHR, we've talked about this a million times. Buy at the channel low or wait for the breakout over 215. Keep it real simple. EXPI, this is one I've liked because, again, if you're going into the real estate strongest time of the year, you got to buy it down here. I mean, we talked about it hitting this like range low from the past in the 22 to 23. I honestly thought 27 was a good area because you have to consider where it came from, 90. That would hold these channels, you had the bounce, but here you go. Watch the 20-day. I mean, it's looking pretty freaking strong. Let's end it on the oil names. XOP, we've talked about this. Needs to, backed off, came down, hit the support range. Now you need to get over 113. Get over 113, it's good to go. ExxonMobil, I've told people beware. It is at the monthly downtrend line. Here at the 100-month and 200-month to have it circled. I'm not surprised if this thing takes a break. And does it take a break mean it dumps? Probably not. It could just mean, imagine if it drops 10% in the next 2 or 3 weeks just going sideways. I feel like that's very logical. So hope people are having a good week. Again, here's another one we put on the alert list. I'm just going to pull them up because I said this was a buy down here at the range low. Then also talked about a Nucor. If you're familiar with Nucor Steel, this is another steel name. Said watch this 80s level, nice higher high today. So I appreciate it. Again, if you're not subscribed, check it out. We have lots of live daily market recaps, trade alerts, educational videos. And also stop by the Discord room if you have any questions. Like, that's the place to go if you ever really want to get in touch with me or you have questions about anything we're talking about. There's tons of us here hanging out, and so it's all good. I'll talk to you guys.
Thanks for watching. For more trading knowledge and insight, click on the videos on the right and also join the Discord room. Link is in the description below. If you have any questions, please stop on by the Discord room and let's chat. Thank you.